Welcome back. All right, power rankings time, which tells you the regular season's back on. Four Nations ended up being highly entertaining and generated a ton of interest. I will be interested myself to see what the ratings look like for the rest of the NHL's regular season and into the playoffs. Does any of that carry over or not? So, what carried over into this week's power rankings? Well, San Jose's still 32nd, so there's that. Every day you can count on the sun coming up. Every day you can count on the stars being in the sky. And it seems like every day you can count on San Jose being 32nd on the power rankings. They're pretty firmly entrenched at this point in time. I don't know that that's going to change before the end of the season. 31, dropping one spot from the last power rankings I did. Chicago. So the Chicago Blackhawks down to 31st. And this feels familiar to me. Chicago and San Jose being at the bottom of the board. Feels like that was the storyline through a lot of the end of last season, especially, but most of the season. And now both of these teams selling at the deadline, it's probably going to get uglier. So, at any rate, I still think San Jose's on the right track. I think Chicago's got a lot of good young players, but yeah, what we're seeing here is just that's the way it is for them. Number 30, dropping one spot from where they were the last time out, and that's Pittsburgh. I keep wanting to say last week, but I didn't do a power rankings like this last week, so but yeah, Pittsburgh drops one spot from where they were the last time I did a power rankings on this board, and an 8-3 loss against Washington will do that. No matter how long people in the studio at ESPN there yell and scream about the Penguins and putting a better team around Crosby, half the league misses the playoffs. I understand the upset people have about Crosby not being in the playoffs, but he has 3 Stanley Cup rings. He's had an extremely good run. He's been in the league for almost 20 years. So other teams winning Stanley Cups I don't think is an awful thing, and I think there's plenty of entertainment value to be had from others. Seriously, if you watched ESPN and you heard them talk about the Penguins, you would think that not having Pittsburgh in the playoffs just destroys the entertainment value of the playoffs. It just that's how it sounds. Number 29 on the board this week, moving up 2 spots from last week, Nashville. The Preds get wins here and there, and they got a win today over Colorado. Thus, they move up. Nashville's not going to be a playoff team. Their season's been very disappointing overall. But yeah, they move up a couple of spots this week to number 29. Number 28, same spot as last week as Buffalo. Now, they did get the big win tonight over the New York Rangers, but other teams in this area of the board won as well. Buffalo's overall record's not fantastic. It's one of those things where I'll keep an eye on where they trend the rest of this week. I keep wins like that in the back of my mind. I want to see is that a trend or is it just a one-off? Does it just tell you how bad the Rangers were today, or were Buffalo really that good? So games beyond this one will give us an idea for where the Rangers and Sabres are headed, but the Sabres 28th this week. Number 27, same spot as last week as well, Seattle. Seattle got a big win tonight as well. They beat Florida, and so yeah, Seattle tomorrow night is in Tampa. We'll see if they can win back-to-backs in the state of Florida. Of course, Tampa Bay's been off for a while, so I did get a kick out of them. I'm trying to remember which broadcast it was today where they said, "Well, this team hasn't played since the day of the Super Bowl." Yeah, there were only 4 teams that played that day. Everybody else has had more time off than that. It was such a weird statement. But anyways, yeah, Seattle, number 27 on the board this week. But we'll see if they can start trending in the right direction, if they can start stringing wins together. Number 26, dropping 2 spots from last week, St. Louis. The Blues, they should have had that win over Winnipeg. They lost that lead in the last minute, and then they lose in the shootout. It's not so much that St. Louis is playing poorly. It's just they're not really in the hunt right now. And there were a couple of teams that got a couple of big wins, so they moved up. And we'll see if they stay up or if St. Louis passes them again. It's not the first time St. Louis has been in the bottom row this year, and it won't be the last time that they climb out either, because they're definitely going to climb out of the bottom row. They're not going to stay in the bottom row. Number 25, moving up 1 spot from last week, Philadelphia. Impressive win today over the Oilers. It is. And it is one of those games where you look and you go, okay, so is this a trend that they're starting? They did have that time off. I've mentioned this too, that there are going to be teams that were playing really well going into the break that are going to struggle coming out, and vice versa. Teams that were struggling that break, that reset's really going to help them. We'll see if that's the case with Philadelphia, if they're going to be one of those ones that are helped. So that's your bottom row for this week's power rankings. All right, we're ready to move on to the next row. Moving up one spot from last week, Montreal. They're not quite as dead as they looked, are they? That being said, they're going to have to string some wins together themselves. The win tonight over Ottawa was impressive, and now it's about following that up and being able to get wins this week. It is a very busy week of hockey, so while there's not a ton of movement on this week's board, next week's board probably going to be bonkers ridiculous. Number 23, dropping 2 spots from last week, Boston. You got to win in regulation against the Ducks. And I understand that the Ducks are playing better this year than last year, but yeah, Boston's just, it's not quite there. It's just not quite syncing up. And I do think this is the year we see Boston miss the playoffs. I think that's where this is headed. And then it's a matter of what do the brain trust for the Bruins do from there. Did they kind of, just rearm themselves for next season? Did they sell anybody off? What are they going to do at the deadline's a question mark too, right? Because Cam Neely had said it, depending on where they are in the standings, they might do like a soft sell. But he did say he wasn't ruling out buying at the deadline, which I swear by all that's holy, if Boston trades a first-round draft pick this year, I know it's not a great draft. I don't care. Number 22, and same spot as last week, Utah. The Utah Hockey Club, they had some good moments tonight against the Kings. In the end, the Kings win that game, of course. So Utah, number 22 on the board this week, not moving up, not moving down. Not a whole lot else to say. Number 21, dropping 1 spot from last week, well, from 2 weeks ago, the New York Rangers. As I mentioned with Buffalo, and I'll mention it again here, that is a concerning game if you're a Rangers fan. They were 3 points out of the playoffs coming into today, and they don't end up gaining any ground. In fact, they lose ground on a couple of teams ahead of them. So, frustrating day because you should win a game against Buffalo, even though it was in Buffalo. They basically had home ice advantage, too. There were a lot of Rangers fans. The Let's Go Rangers chants were right there at the start of the game. They just didn't take advantage of it, and Buffalo got themselves rolling. Although there is something to be said for a home team when they go out there and it's kind of a hostile environment and there's more fans for the other team. I've always felt like that probably ticks those guys off. Like, yeah, let's not let these people go home happy. Anyways, Rangers number 21 this week. We'll see where they are next week. They have to bounce back from that loss. That was embarrassing. Number 20. And moving up 3 spots from last week, Anaheim. So the reason I'm wearing a Ducks jersey, this is the highest mover. They're not the only one that moves up 3 spots, but that shows you that there's no dramatic moves up or down the board. But Anaheim, a game above NHL 500, they're playing well. They're finding ways to get wins. Leo Carlsson with a goal and an assist tonight. If he really gets things going, that's bad news for everybody because the Ducks are a good team. And Zegras had a goal tonight as well. It was a nice goal by him. If he gets things rolling, good for him as well. Because we're back to that time of year where it's almost trade deadline, so people have to get the rumors going about Zegras again. And I've started seeing those again. So if he plays well and he gets the puck in the net sometimes between now and the deadline, maybe we don't see a move there. But the fact they're above 500, who knows? Maybe the Ducks make a run at it. As crazy as that sounds as possible. Number 19, same spot as last week, Calgary. The Flames, same spot. And pretty sure they haven't played since the last time they did a power rankings on this board. So they play tomorrow against San Jose. There's definitely more on the line for Calgary in that game than San Jose. If they lose against San Jose, then they drop down. Anaheim moves up yet again. It should be interesting to see how all of that goes for the Flames this coming week. There's definitely some weakness with the Canucks. That they're without Hughes. They're going to be without Demko for a while. Pettersson's fighting some sort of injury as well. There's definitely vulnerability there for the Flames to move up with a good week. Number 18, dropping 1 spot from last week, Ottawa. The loss against Montreal drops them down to 1 spot. The Ottawa Senators, they're supposed to be in the driver's seat for this, and they're seemingly frittering it away. And I have to say that if they don't hold this playoff spot, and if they end up falling short of the playoffs, this could be the most disappointing season. Is that the right term? Most disappointing season that the Sens have had maybe ever. Like it's got to be up there, because if this team is in a playoff spot and they look like they're home and cooled, and then they just fall right out of it with 20 some games left, if they trend in the wrong direction now, that's going to be devastating for their fan base. Number 17 moving up one spot as a result of what happens here with the Sens tonight, the New York Islanders. So they move up one spot. The Islanders, of course, are playing tomorrow night, so we'll see if they move into the top 16 next week. But for this week, they round out what is your bottom 16, which usually is not the source of a lot of arguments either. We get into the top 16, and that's usually where we see a lot of arguments. Columbus is number 16. Beating Chicago just means you beat Chicago. They got the win. They got it at home. Jenner's back in the lineup. He got on the score sheet. Elvis looked good. There's a lot of positives. Marchenko back in the lineup, and Werenski looks no worse for wear coming out of Four Nations, which is remarkable. A lot of ice time being used by Werenski this year. He is having a career year. You got to hope this team makes the playoffs if you're a Columbus fan. This might be the best chance they've had in a long time. Number 15, same spot as last week, New Jersey. The Devils suffer a setback tonight, but it was against Dallas. Dallas has been getting better on the road, so I didn't punish New Jersey for that loss against Dallas. And if I was going to, I don't think I can justify dropping them below Columbus after Columbus beat Chicago. So that's why there's no movement there. I think that makes sense. But hey, number 14 this week, same spot as last week as well, Vancouver. It is going to be tough for Vancouver to maintain this spot going forward. So they lost tonight against Vegas. Losing in Vegas is not going to cause the team to drop down out of the second row, because that would be crazy. Vegas is a very good team at home, even though in their last 7 coming into tonight they were 2-2-3 in their last 7 at home. But Vancouver, they put up a good fight. They had a really good third period. They just could not solve Aiden Hill. They kept it a 1-goal game until the empty netter. I thought Vancouver played about as well as one could expect. And if they keep that work ethic up, they should win their share of games from here. Tomorrow night in Utah is going to be a huge one. If they win that one in regulation, get a little bit of separation. But if they lose, Calgary wins, things get a lot tighter. Because then Utah's getting closer too. Number 13, dropping one spot from last week, from 2 weeks ago, is Detroit. The Wings, they had that lead against Minnesota. They weren't able to maintain that lead against Minnesota. Minnesota's a good team. I get that. So they just dropped the one spot. And we'll see what Detroit can do this upcoming week to turn things around. Number 11, before things get bad, right? Number 11, Tampa. So Tampa Bay moves up one spot. The Tampa Bay Lightning, they emerge from their 2-week plus hibernation tomorrow. We'll see how well they play against Seattle. Seattle showed Florida today what they're able to do. So Tampa Bay should know they have to bring their A game, because Seattle's starting to look like a team that's realizing they're fighting for their playoff lives, which should lead to more wins and should make things a little more difficult for Tampa, but we shall see. Number 11 this week, dropping one spot from the last time I did a power rankings, the LA Kings. The Kings got the win today against Utah. It was touch and go at points here. I didn't really bust them down as a punishment of any sort. They got passed. These things happen. So yeah, the LA Kings are 11th on the board this week. Number 10 also dropping one spot from where they were the last time I did this. The Carolina Hurricanes. So Carolina drops one spot. They lost that game against the Toronto Maple Leafs. They did almost come back and tie it, but almost. And they were behind 4-0 when they started that comeback. So big win for Toronto. Pretty big loss for Carolina. They have to be thankful, though, that New Jersey lost as well. So they're still 2 points clear of New Jersey, but they lose a little more ground on Washington, who are running away with the division, running away and hiding. Number 9, dropping 2 spots from last time I did this, and that is Colorado. The Avs with the 2-1 loss in Nashville, I bumped them out of the top row. I felt like top row. There was another team that I thought fought their way in there, and so Colorado drops down to 9th. We'll see this coming week where they are as well. But there's your third row. So now we go into the top row. Rows 2, 3, and 4 populated. And in the top row, moving up 3 spots as well. So the same amount of spots that Anaheim moved up, and that is Minnesota. Minnesota's back in the top row. I was impressed with the fact that Detroit gets that 3-1 lead early in the third period. Minnesota didn't give up. Minnesota fought hard. They tie the game. They win it. That's impressive. Against a Detroit team that's been pretty good at home. So Minnesota, the best road team in the league now. And I think today showed why. And so we'll see if they can keep that up. It is one thing to keep in mind, because they are behind Dallas. Obviously, they're behind Winnipeg. If they're starting the playoffs on the road and they're the best road team in the league, maybe that's to their benefit, right? So I'm trying to bring about a run by the Minnesota Wild in the playoffs, even though it would probably be at the expense of the team I'm rooting for, Dallas, because I don't think anybody's catching Winnipeg. I don't think that's going to happen. Number 7 this week, moving up one spot from the last time I had power rankings in front of said board, the Vegas Golden Knights. So Vegas in the top row and now moving up ever so slightly. I think they're getting it together, and I knew they would. I'm not. I don't have any concern for Vegas down the stretch. Vegas is going to be fine. They're going to do well. They didn't need a point from Eichel or Stone tonight either. They still got the win over Vancouver. So those hard-fought wins like that, those are the ones that are important. And now they find themselves 2 points clear of Edmonton atop the division. Number 6 this week, dropping one spot from last week, is Florida. Florida loses that game at home against Seattle, so I switched 2 teams on the board. Just it's that simple. Florida drops just the one spot. I thought they played well at points, although only getting 5 shots in the third period. That's not a very Florida-like thing at home. So we'll see if that's the start of some sort of trend. Keep in mind, almost every player on this roster, it seems, was at 4 Nations, and of course Kachuk's out, so that's going to affect their ability to play early on. So I'm not going to punish them a lot, but they get dropped one spot. Moving up one spot from last week is Toronto. So the Toronto Maple Leafs move into the top 5. Yes, they did almost choke away that lead over Carolina, but they didn't. Carolina didn't come back, so Carolina drops one spot. Toronto moves up one spot on this week's power rankings, and Toronto's going to be a team to keep an eye on. If they win the division, like let's just say that they do pass Florida and they win the division, so does that make them more confident come playoff time? Because we know that playoff setbacks are as much a mental exercise with Toronto as a physical one. So see how it goes this year. Number 4, same spot as last week, Edmonton. I went back and forth on this. I went back and forth on whether or not I felt like Edmonton should stay 4th, and I decided yes. That moving up Toronto 2 spots based on that win tonight, I felt like no, I'm going to leave Edmonton in 4th, and I'll see how they do in their next games. Maybe they just weren't sharp in that first game back. So I'm giving them a little bit of a benefit of the doubt and keeping them in the top 4, but we'll see. Number 3 this week, same spot as last week, Dallas. Dallas, when they were up 2-0, and it looked like they might, maybe they looked at certain points tonight, like maybe they could have a blowout victory over New Jersey. I might have thought about, I don't think I can justify, I can't even say moving them up. I can't. The top 2 teams on this board are Washington and Winnipeg, and I don't know that there's any justification I could have for somebody being ahead of them right now at this point. Even though both Washington and Winnipeg have shown some weakness here and there over the last month, it's an 82-game schedule. That's going to happen. So, yeah, Dallas is playing really well. I feel like 3rd spot's the right place for them. Number 2, and so we're going to go through this. Number 2 is Washington. Washington got the 8-3 win over Pittsburgh. So I was debating about whether or not to bump them up to first place. And my thought process was, if St. Louis beats Winnipeg, I can justify having Winnipeg in second place and Washington in first. Washington in first. So Winnipeg is first place for the 3rd week in a row. The Washington Capitals are second for the 3rd week in a row. They were number 1 the week before that. Winnipeg's on a 9-game heater, so because Winnipeg's won 9 in a row, I can't bust them down. I can't. The Washington Capitals, on the other hand, are playing very, very well. They're winning a lot of games too, and these teams are tied for first place in the National Hockey League in points. So really, it's just it is such a minor difference between the two in terms of where they are on the board. And if Winnipeg falters at all, Washington absolutely will pass them, because Washington, I would imagine, would do that. These teams, though, have been neck and neck on this board for, that's 3 straight weeks now. They've been close to one another for a while, though, on this board, and I feel like it's going to be that way throughout the rest of the season. The one thing I do wonder is, come playoff time, will Winnipeg and Washington really, truly be the teams to beat? And I think there's an argument to be made for yes. I think there's an argument to be made for no. Which is a video I'll probably do once we get closer to playoff time. Not at this point, but there you go. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, as always. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Not a ton of movement this week, but I felt like we're back to power rankings because the regular season's back. So even without a lot of movement, there's been some, and so we can have that debate. We are 19 weeks in. By my count, we have 6 more power rankings to go, and then we're into the playoffs. It's either 6 or 7, and then we're into the playoffs. So the break that we had that just finished far later in the season, at least feels far later. It's like a week and a half, 2 weeks later than where it normally is, and it's made a difference. It's definitely made a difference. More games were done before the break than usual, so it's going to be a sprint from here. But let me know your thoughts. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Thank you guys so much for all your support. It's greatly appreciated, and I have my energy back. I feel like I'm good to go for the rest of the regular season, and then playoffs. Excited for the playoffs. All right. Thanks for your support. I will talk to you again soon.